Monday, I shared information with you about a body that was found back in November alongside Sneed Road, and we needed your help in identifying that body. Over the last 2 days, the Sheriff's Office has received numerous tips from Facebook, through other social media platforms, and through phone calls to our detectives. One of those tips has proved to be useful, and we have identified the female that was found alongside Sneed Road. Her name was Mary Ann Zune. She was 65 years old, and she was from Fort Pierce. So now that we have identified her, we have notified next of kin. All of her next of kin are located out of state. They have confirmed that there are no next of kin here in the local area. And let me back up. I'm sorry, guys. Let me show you a picture of her as well. Wrong one. So again, Mary Ann Zune. She was 65 years old, and she was from Fort Pierce. Can everybody get a good video of that? Okay. And if you need to see that again afterwards, I'll give that to you as well. But again, we were able to notify next of kin that we're living out of state, no relatives here in town. And now what we need help with is we need to figure out what happened in her last days and her final hours. That's where our investigation turns now. We still don't believe that this was a homicide. There's nothing leading us to believe that. But we do need to try to figure out why she was out there and how her final days and hours happened. So I'm asking again for any information. Anybody out there with anything no matter how small you think it is, no matter when the last time you saw her was, please use the same platforms that I gave you before, whether you use our website at www.stluciesheriff.com, whether you call 772-462-7300 and ask for Detective Paul Taylor, or whether you use our anonymous the anonymous ways that you have to do through Facebook and other social media platforms. I promise you'll remain anonymous, but if there's anything that you can provide for us, that's what I'm here asking you for today. And to also thank you for the tips that came in. Thank you for the information that led to being able to identify and put closure in this family's life.
Can you give us more about her ID, her age? You gave us her name, but what's her age?
She's 65 years old. She was 65 years old. She was born in 1955. Her actual birth date I have here, and it was 4/16 of 1955.
4/16 of 55?
Yes, sir.
And how do you spell the name? What's the correct spelling?
Mary Ann. I'm sorry, Brian. What?
Correct spelling.
The correct spelling is Maryann.
Is it 2 words?
One word, Mary Ann.
Okay.
And then the last name is Zune, and that's Zoon.
N is in November?
N is in November.
And she has no local next of kin?
No local next of kin. She lived in Fort Pierce in an apartment off of US 1 somewhere, but that's really as much as we're going to provide with that right now.
What did the relatives say, like in terms of like her mental state or what her lifestyle was like, or anything that might lead you to what could have caused her to be out on Sneed Road?
I don't know the details of the information provided by the relatives. I don't think that they have seen or spoken to her in quite some time. And when I say quite some time, I mean years. But they did confirm that there were no known relatives.
Had you had any contact with her over the years, whether it's through arrests or Baker Acts or anything like that?
No.
Did she have any criminal history locally?
I don't think so.
Was she living by herself, or did she have roommates, a boyfriend, girlfriend?
Again, I don't want to go too far down that path today and talk about too much of where she was living and who she lived with, because again, like I told you, our goal right now is to piece together those final days and those final hours, and really what we're asking for is more information from people in the community that might have known her, that might have seen her, that might have saw her on a daily basis, or that might have been her roommates at one time or another, if that's the case. But again, that'll help us piece that together, and let's just focus on getting that information at this time.
Did she own a vehicle?
No, she did not own a vehicle.
How did you guys get to her? I know you guys had a tip, but what was that tip? Was it the tattoo? What was it that gave you guys the...
So the interesting part about that is there were multiple things. There were multiple pieces that came in that actually led to being able to Detective Taylor and his team being able to put some things together. He reached out to our intel unit, asked them to follow up on some leads and tips that he had. So it really was kind of a team effort. There were multiple tips, multiple things that came in. Detective Taylor reached out to all his resources, and they sort of put the puzzle together at the end of the day, and were able to say, we think this is the person. And then through family notification and some other things, they were able to identify her. So we have made that positive identification that way.
So just to clarify, the family did not reach out to you all after you pieced the pieces together. You then reached out to the family.
We have made identification, and then obviously before we wanted to reach back out and publicly say who she was, we wanted to notify them, and that's been done, and that was done after we did our investigation into who she was.
Last time you made reference to DNA and genealogy information. Now, did that come into play?
It did not. It did not. That probably would have been actually several months down the road by the time we got some of that back, and that's a long process.
Do you know, I know you indicated earlier that you still think it's a suspicious death,
Mm-hmm.
And not, as opposed to a homicide. Well, I mean, but I also get that you're being a little, trying to keep some things close to the chest and not revealing a lot of things. So are you saying that this could be a crime that's associated with her death?
No, and let me be clear. If it's a suspicious death, we're going to investigate that fully to find out why. Why was she there? How did she die? And again, there's no new information from what I gave you guys the other day with regard to the investigation that would lead us to believe that it was anything other than what we discussed the other day, which leads us to it's a suspicious death. But we are asking for that information of her final hours and final days. We don't know what that's going to lead us to. And I don't want to speculate, but that's all part of that investigation as to why was she there? Why was she on Sneed Road in a desolate area? And how did she actually die and pass away? But those final days and final hours, and I know there's people that have information, and like I said, you'll remain anonymous. We're not looking to, to go after someone. What we're looking for is how and why.
We talked a little bit about this, about the family getting closure. Why is that so important for you all to bring that closure to the family?
I mean, as human beings, that's important. We all have families. We all have loved ones. We all have people we care about in our lives. And I've seen through my 2.5 decades in this job, a lot of times families want to know those final hours, those final days. They want to know when you have a loved one missing and you haven't heard from that person and you want to know where they are. That's closure in our lives. And it's important to family to know what those final days and hours were like as well, because that's part of the closure process for families.
But she had not been reported missing by that family.
No.
I mean, do you have any kids?
No, not that we know of.
Is there an official cause of death?
No, cause of death still could not be determined by the medical examiner.
Any children?
No.
I mean, siblings, I guess? And
No.
siblings?
Actually, the family that is out of state was a sibling. I know that much.
How far away from where she lived is the Sneed Road location? Is it like 10 miles, 15 miles, 5 miles, or you know what I mean?
We don't know where she was currently living. Again, last known address was off of in Fort Pierce off of US 1.
North, south?
Fort Pierce, US 1. Between Midway and I don't want to speculate. I don't have the address, but when it was explained to me, Greg, it was US 1 in Fort Pierce. So.
Now, you all said you reviewed surveillance video in the Orange Avenue area looking for any tips. Now that you have more of a pinpoint location, have you all reviewed surveillance video from
We'll
nearby?
continue to. That's part of our investigation. When we start receiving information, when we know where her last known address is, we'll start talking to people in those areas, last known associates and information, and try to potentially find video. That's all part of the investigation.